another promise disappear, another future turn into fear. Another man who swore he would stay found a reason to walk away. I stood before them.
The candle between them had burned low. Nancy was still on her knees.
My daughter,
Prophetess Deborah said,
you
at
will not
last.
marry unless your mother dies.
Nancy did not move. For a strange moment, she wasn't even afraid, only trying to understand the words, as if they might make more sense the second time. They didn't.
What kind of woman of God says that to someone?
She finally asked.
I did not tell you that.
Deborah said, calm in a way that frightened Nancy more than anger would have.
I told you what I see. Your marriage has been tied to your mother's life. As long as that bond exists, every man who comes close to marrying you will be pushed away.
Nancy thought of Daniel, gone quiet 3 days ago, cancelling everything with no real reason. She thought of Chuka years before, and how he had simply vanished. She thought of her mother's collapses, always arriving at the exact hour a wedding date might be set.
Who did this to me?
Nancy asked.
Fast. 3 days. Pray that God breaks every agreement made over your life without your consent. And after the 3rd day?
She did not answer. Deborah blew out the candle. It was that silence, not even the word die, that followed Nancy into the dark and would not leave her alone. "6 minutes past 5 that morning, Madame Beatrice Zé locked her bedroom door from the inside. She did it quietly enough that even the housekeeper, already awake and arranging cushions Nancy had sent from Lagos, didn't hear the lock click. Outside, the driver polished the black SUV Nancy had bought her mother for Christmas. Almost everything beautiful in that house had come from Nancy, one way or another. Beatrice knelt at her wardrobe, moved aside 3 folded church uniforms, and lifted out a small wooden box. She opened it only enough to slide 2 fingers inside, found what she wanted by feel, and went still. Eyes closed, lips moving, saying something too quiet to hear, in the practiced way of someone who had said it many times before. A knock broke her concentration. She closed the box, returned it to the wardrobe, and stood in one smooth movement. "Come in." By the time the housekeeper stepped inside, the woman in the room was the one everyone in Asaba knew. A respected widow, a prayerful mother, a woman believed to have suffered alone to raise her only daughter. In Lagos, 35-year-old Nancy stood before her mirror, adjusting an emerald dress she'd already changed her mind about 4 times. Today, Daniel's family was coming to Asaba, the first real step toward marriage. She'd reached this point before. Chuka had been her first real love, gone without explanation once his family requested a formal introduction. Emeka had bought a ring, then simply stopped answering his phone, as if the ring itself had frightened him off. 2 men, 2 different excuses, the same timing, every time. The weak marriage became real. Daniel knew all of it. She told him everything over his slow dinner, watching his face for the flinch the others had shown. He hadn't flinched. "I'm not those men," he'd said. Her phone rang. "My daughter," her mother said warmly. "Are you ready?" Almost. Daniel's coming for me. A pause, longer than the question needed. After today, things may change. A woman marries and her husband becomes her family. You'll always be my family, mommy. That's what daughters say. A quick laugh followed. I'm only joking. Just don't forget who suffered to raise you. I could never forget you. When the call ended, something in Nancy's chest sat wrong, like a picture hung a centimeter too high. She told herself it was nerves. Her mother always grew strange around the subject of marriage. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later in a cream traditional dress, and Nancy knew something was off immediately. He didn't say a word about her outfit. "You didn't sleep," she said. "No." Nervous? He thought about it too long. Maybe. For most of the 3-hour drive, his hand stayed too tight on the wheel for a man simply meeting his future mother-in-law. Nancy told herself again that it was nerves. They were 40 minutes out when her phone wouldn't stop ringing. "Auntie Gloria," breathless. "Nancy, your mother's collapsed. We're taking her to hospital." "We have to go," Nancy said, already reaching for her seatbelt. But Daniel's hands had gone rigid. He was staring straight ahead at nothing. "Something's wrong," he said. "My mother collapsed. Of course something's wrong." "No, since last night, I've had this feeling I shouldn't go into that house, like something standing at the gate telling me to turn back. This isn't the time for that. I know how it sounds. My mother might be dying." That reached him. He drove. Madame Beatrice lay with a tube under her nose. Her blood pressure spiked for reasons the doctors couldn't yet name. Nancy took her hand. "Mommy, I'm here." Her mother's eyes opened slowly, found Daniel behind Nancy's shoulder, and for less than a second, the weakness vanished completely, replaced by something sharp and assessing. Then it settled back into place, like a mask resuming its position. Nancy didn't see it. Daniel did. He stepped back. "Call your family," Nancy told him without turning. "We'll reschedule." He didn't move. He said, "I need air," and left before she could stand. He didn't return that afternoon. He didn't answer his phone once. At midnight, sitting beside her sleeping mother, her phone finally lit up.
"Nancy, forgive me. I can't go through with it. Something is telling me to run before it's too late."
She read it 3 times, as if the words might rearrange into something survivable, then looked at her mother, asleep and breathing evenly, and did not yet know the day meant to begin her marriage had begun something else entirely. Nancy called Daniel until her thumb ached. The phone stayed off. An old familiar pain settled in. Chuka, Emeka, now Daniel. Different men, same result. What is wrong with me? Her mother recovered fast, as always, discharged the next afternoon, complaining in the car about how the housekeeper had arranged the flowers. 3 days later, Daniel agreed to meet her at a small restaurant. He looked like he hadn't slept in all 3 days. "I keep seeing something," he said, before she'd even sat down. "A woman. You are in a wedding dress, but there's a rope around your waist. She's holding the other end. She says she belongs to me." Nancy's skin went cold. "It's only a dream, Daniel." "It doesn't feel like only a dream. When I saw your mother in that hospital bed, something entered my chest." "So you are blaming my mother?" "I'm telling you what I felt." "Then stop running from a feeling and come back to me." His eyes filled, but he shook his head. "I can't." Nancy stood so fast, her chair scraped
Then
the
you're
floor.
exactly like the others.
At home, her mother comforted her with the same warm arms and soft words. Husbands can leave, Beatrice said. Mothers remain forever. Word traveled fast among relatives. Nancy was too successful, too selective, too old to keep waiting. At church, her mother asked the priest to pray for Nancy's marriage in front of the whole congregation. Nancy stood at the front while people watched her with pity, dressed up as concern. The shame followed her back to Lagos. She stopped attending weddings and buried herself in work. One evening, her colleague Ifeoma found her crying quietly at her desk. "This isn't ordinary heartbreak anymore," she said. "I know a prophetess. No crowd, no noise, no demands for money." Nancy refused until she dreamt she was locked in a room in a wedding dress, a rope around her waist, someone behind her pulling her steadily from the door. She called Ifeola the next morning. The prayer house was small and quiet. Nancy told Prophetess Deborah everything. Chuka, Emeka, Daniel, her mother's collapses, the rope. "What happens to your mother every time one of these relationships ends?" Deborah asked. Nancy opened her mouth to answer quickly, then stopped because the answer was arriving faster than she wanted. Before Chuka's introduction, her mother's stomach pain had vanished the moment the relationship ended. When Emeka proposed, she suddenly couldn't walk until Emeka was gone. "Those were coincidences," Nancy said, though her voice had lost its certainty. Deborah asked her to kneel and began to pray, quietly at first, then stopped without warning. The candle between them had burned low. "My daughter, you will not marry unless your mother dies." "What kind of woman of God says that?" Nancy demanded, though she'd heard it once already, in the dark, before this moment had a name. "I did not tell you to harm her. I told you what I see. The woman holding the rope has already made a vow. She will never let you go. But there's still a chance. When something like this is confronted directly, the person holding it is given one more opportunity to change her mind." "My mother sacrificed everything for me," Deborah said quietly. "Love can turn into fear, and fear can turn into something that looks like love that isn't. It becomes possession instead. Will the prayer hurt her? It forces whoever is holding you to choose, release you or don't. How will I know who the person is?" Deborah hesitated. "Whatever was promised may return to the one who made the promise. You want me to pray without knowing what it might cost? The choice is yours, but do not begin what you aren't ready to finish." As Nancy reached the door, Deborah added, "Go home, watch, say nothing yet, even to the person you suspect. Some things reveal themselves if you give them room to." That night, an old photograph of herself and Chuka stopped Nancy cold. Her mother standing behind them, smiling the same warm smile Nancy had trusted her whole life. She remembered now how that smile had vanished the moment Chuka's Fande requested an introduction. How her mother's stomach pain had cancelled everything 2 days before it. How Chuka's final message had read, "I never thought you would end everything through your mother." At the time, she'd read it as bitterness. Now, it looked like a question she'd never bothered to answer. She called Auntie Gloria, who resisted at first, then spoke fast, as if she wanted the words out before she changed her mind.
Before Chuka's introduction, Your mother told me she didn't suffer to raise a daughter for another family to enjoy. A few days later, she traveled to a village outside Agbo. She came back with a small wooden box. It's in her wardrobe. I don't know what's... Who are you speaking to?
A new voice cut in, sharp and close. The call went dead. Nancy sat, holding the phone long after the line disconnected, listening to nothing at all.